Welcome to Love is Alchemy, a monthly sacred circle we hold from the Love Mandala, where our purpose is to help people build a strong foundation for love in all your relationships. And today we have what I would say is like one of those super practical topics. We're going to talk about relationship mirrors, and maybe you've heard of them and know about them. Hopefully I can shed some more light on it if you have, or if it's new to you. I'm going to try to do a good job of covering how to think about them so they're really useful to you because they have a tremendous benefits for us to help us to have better relationships. And they typically are easy to identify. We'll talk about that, but they come with those opportunities where you start to have a recurring theme either with multiple people or with one person, and then there might be an opportunity to uncover something there. So we'll basically do three things. I'm gonna just talk about like what they are, how they work, and the benefits, and briefly. And then I'm gonna give you a couple examples so that it's a little bit more real life. And then we're gonna dive in, and we're gonna do a bit of a like mindfulness exercise for you to try on one and see if you can see where it takes you. And then that'll be it. So we'll keep it short and sweet and hopefully effective for everybody. And please, if you have questions put them in the chat. We'll keep an eye on it so that if there's something that's not making sense, I can stop and pause about it. And we'll go from there. So I'm going to first pull up the couple slides I have, and we'll go through them pretty quick. Give me one more sec here. And I'm just going to check. Can everybody see them? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. Oh, we're good there. So one of the things I like to tell people, because sometimes people have never heard about universal laws, sometimes they're very familiar. Most people have heard about the law of attraction or something like that, and that's just one of them. And one of the laws that we sort of exist within, whether we're familiar with it or not, is the law of within and without, or sometimes people call it the law of above and below. But in this case, it makes the most sense to talk about within and without. So the principle is that inside of us is that our experience in this world is basically a reflection outside of what's inside. So there's always some kind of mirroring going on in our lives. And the mirror is feedback to point us to places that need attention. So it's like the unhealed aspect in us will get reflected in relationships so that we can identify it and heal it. And a lot of people, there's really actually a lot of work done on intimate relationships, how people come together to heal the deepest, core wounds they have. So sometimes those relationships that are most important to us bring us the hardest stuff. But that's because on a soul level, we have this opportunity to really like meet somebody who in their heart has committed to do this work with us. And that's not to say that it means everybody has to be together for a lifetime or that the work, that we always are able to complete it. But that's the opportunity of these intimate relationships. And it also happens with other people. And I'm going to tell you a story about my cat too. Like it happens everywhere. It's not just, so that hopefully that'll make you laugh. And one of the biggest benefits of working the relationship mirrors is that they keep us separate from people. So aside from like having an irritation with somebody that keeps coming up that you can't figure out how to solve, they also separate us from even people that we don't know well. Like we might see somebody and go, oh, they're like this, and I have a judgment about them. And often that judgment just keeps us from feeling connected to everyone, even if they're not people we're going to have, in our lives all the time. But we always think like, oh, I'm not like that person. I'm over here and they're over there. And that judgment just keeps us from accepting people as they are. And we'll talk about kind of how to move past that with one tool. In the way that mirrors are easiest to work with, Dylan's coming in. The way that they're easiest to work with is that there's usually a trigger. And when I say trigger, I mean something like, Vera had one of those experiences where something bugs you, but it really bugs you, and you almost think this is more significant than what's happening. Like maybe somebody does something small and you feel like this really big response to it. That's definitely a sign that you're in one of these mirrored situations. And it's looking, and instead of seeing it as a bad thing, one of the ways that's helpful is just to say, like, okay, this is basically ready to heal. It's not coming up because I made a mistake or I failed something, but because it just wants to heal and it's just time to pay attention to it. So that I call that a charge. Like if you really feel that energy with something that's upsetting and it really like, it kind of gets to you in a different way than just an everyday thing. And usually when we're experiencing, we have a big judgment. So we'll say like that person is really, um, what's a good example? That person never listens to me. They never do this. They always are like this. So we have a judgment. And that's how it's typically expressed. And the thing that's very funny is sometimes you can see a mirror and you'll go, yeah, I know I don't always listen too, so maybe that's why it bugs me. And that's an easy one. But sometimes the ones that you think there's no way I'm doing that anywhere in my life are really potent and actually hold the most power to make a change. So these hard ones, I'm going to give you an example from my life that really, really surprised me. And I'm going to talk about some personal stuff. All the people in these situations in my family, they know about this. So I'm just putting that out there. So everybody, can feel comfortable. So, I've had a conversation about all these scenarios I'm going to share with you. Um, and then you can think of the mirror as just a subtle reflection. So they get louder in my experience when we ignore them, but they start out very subtle and they point us to our healing. So that's any questions as we're going along here. Okay, and keep going, but please, you can put up your hand or drop in the chat if you have a question. Um, so then, oh, sorry about that. So then we have it, these really are blind spots. So this is the funny thing about mirroring is sometimes at first they seem kind of hard to spot because they are blind spots and they're disowned parts of ourselves. So there's a part of us that we have kind of pushed off to the side that we don't want to look at, or maybe it's something that happened when we were very young and we're not paying attention to it anymore naturally, and yet it needs attention. So they're pointing us back to the places for love and forgiveness. And they really probably are things we would not address or we're going to ignore and miss if we don't see the reflection. So this is why relationships are sort of a gift to us, that even when they're frustrating, they're offering us this opportunity to evolve, to learn new things, to become more integrated as people. And all those benefits, really assist us in the long run in having a better experience. So and then I just want to help you understand the context of these reflections, because at first glance you might think it only says something back and forth about the two people involved, but it's not always the case. And I'll give you examples after this, but usually the obvious ones are like, I'm judging you, and it's actually something I might do to myself or to another person. But we often don't think about that self part. Like if you're saying to somebody, like, you never listen to me, you might be a great listener with your friends and your family, but you might not listen to yourself. So that's the kind of, nuance that can be in a reflection. The the other thing is it can actually be about a relationship with the universe or with what I call source energy. It might not actually be with a physical person, but with how we relate to our concept of a God or a concept of the environment that we're living in. And those are a little bit more subtle, but just to kind of leave that as part of the picture. And then the last thing that's probably the I don't know if they're the hardest ones, they're the most nuanced, but sometimes we judge people not for something we do to ourselves or other people or even have this relationship with the universe, but we judge them without asking the question, if I was in their shoes, is it possible that I could do what they do? And we don't know. There's so much we don't know about each other, about people's paths, about the lifetimes they've had, the experiences. It really opens the door. This is the lever that I use to stay out of judgment when I get really, this is a great one to use in the political realm, because like you might look across and say, this person supports X and I don't, and I cannot understand why they would do that. And it can create a lot of divide in families and friends and stuff like that. And one way to just come to peace with, maybe it doesn't mean you have to agree, but just to say, like, if I had lived their life, is it possible that I would see things differently? Just not to necessarily make it right, not to, but just to get out of the judgment and just to move into a place of neutrality, because that allows us to have a lot more connectedness with people and a lot more unity. And I know that's a bit of a, that's a lot of a mouthful. Is there anybody has any questions about that one? Okay, I'll keep going. And I'm going to give you my stories here for a little bit. I'll make them brief, but so I have first, I'm going to talk about my cat, Indy. So little Indy we had for a long time. We really miss her. She died not that long ago, but we had her like almost 20 years. And she, I had two cats actually at the time. She had a brother who ran away a long time ago. And these two of them were, when our kids were little, they were running around the house, and they were great cats, like nothing was going on. And I hit this point in my development where I was working deeply with very old wounds from my childhood. And there was a piece that I wasn't really paying attention to. I had had really painful experience as a child of being molested. And I not even remembered that until I was 40 years old. And so once that came up, it was just, I felt like everything was a mess inside. I was just coping with all this stuff and trying to sort it out. And one of the pieces that I wasn't dealing with had to do with anger. So what was happening was the cat, Indy, would just do all these behaviors she'd never done before. It's like she was reflecting to me anger that I wasn't expressing. And so she started destroying furniture. She came one time, I was sitting in my bed. I think I was meditating even. She came on the bed and she peed right in front of me. She'd never done anything like that. It was a mess and it was super frustrating. And what happened was she kept doing things that made me really angry. And then I would release some of the anger. And it took somebody to kind of help me see this. But what was happening was she was trying to serve me by saying, you're not paying attention. And there's anger that needs to be released about this experience, because I just was raised in this like, be a good girl, be quiet kind of environment. And so when I saw that, I was able to do the work around that. And then the behavior just entirely stopped. And, maybe everybody wouldn't, trust my interpretation of that. But for me, it was really clear that that's what was happening over time. So that's a really unusual one about a pet, but we're in relationship with them. So that can be the case. I have here in the middle, my three kids, they're not exactly at the age that they were all at the same time, but when they were all little, and I put them in here because I had this experience with them that was really interesting too. And when they were small, I loved to take care of them and read books and, cook for them and do all those things and hold them. But when they asked me to play with them, to sit down and like play a game or play teacups, like all these kind of things that kids do, or maybe, I could do it for only like a couple minutes, and a part of me just would shut down, and I would just be unable to allow that to happen. And it wasn't, this is not a good example, I guess, of a direct statement I was making inside, but I just had this feeling like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to play with you. And I looked at that because they're adorable. They were wonderful kids. Like I love being a mother, and I couldn't do it for very long. And what I discovered in looking at the reflection was that they were pointing me to something that I missed in my childhood. My mother had, bless her for what she did, because she raised eight, actually eventually 12 children, but she gave birth to eight of us, like back to back. And she was so busy taking care of babies and raising and cooking meals and all those things that she didn't have time to play with us. And for me, there was this wounding in my inner child that said, like, I like, I didn't get that. And so it's just so hard for me to give that to you. So I needed to do some work to heal the little girl in me that was missing that in order to be able to move into this. And this one was a really hard one for me. It took some, I don't even know if I've completely mastered it, but I'm better at it, even though they're grown up now. Um, and then the last example I'll tell you on the next slide is with, this is the first picture Sabu and I took together when we got together. But as a part, this is probably the most common kind of thing is, but this was a judgment. I'm just gonna, I'll show you what it was. So Sue's like a fantastic partner, and I was having this experience where I just could feel this distance, and I felt almost, it sounds weird because it seems like a weird judgment, but I almost felt like he had walls around him and that he was like an island. I couldn't quite touch or reach him. And we did this exercise actually at a workshop together where they had us try turning it around. So I'm going to show you what it looks like to turn it around. Like, so if I said you're distant, I would turn around and say, I am distant. You have walls around you. I have walls around me. You're like an island. I feel like an island. So they had us turn the projection on it. And I honestly could not see how this was going to take me anywhere. And what happened was so surprising because what it led me to was a very deep piece of healing around my childhood experience where I was sexually abused, where I felt like the whole family didn't want to look at what happened. And so they pushed me out into an island and I was left there to cope with it. And nobody wanted to talk about it, see it, know about it. And I did not know that feeling was inside of me until we did this exercise. And when that came forward, it was just like, oh, oh, wow, what an opportunity to heal something where I felt so separated from my whole extended family, which is really big. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful gift to be able to see that. And then I could know that, okay, this isn't really about he and I. There, and there's always opportunities to talk about it and see if there's something there. But in this case, he was just offering this feeling was really a big projection on my part. So this I'm gonna pause there because we went through a lot of stuff and we'll stop doing the slides and do an exercise ourselves. The thing I like to always share too when we do these is that the exercise is useful and I think our minds like these things, but the truth is that underneath anything like this is it's the power of love that really makes a difference to how we experience things and whether things heal. So if you feel like you're lost ever in a process or anything, just go back to the love inside. Just feel for that love, whether it's you feel it's coming from the earth or from source energy or from inside of yourself in your heart. All those things are available resources. And so I'm going to try to guide you to a place where we can access that. And sometimes when you do work with projections, I'll take this off. Sometimes we need to do emotional release and there might be pieces to it. So I would recommend not picking something that is gigantic in your life that has the most charge ever because we don't have time to work with everybody one-on-one. But pick something that has more than like a 1 or 2, but not a, level 8 to 10 kind of charge on it. So what I'll do first is I want you just to uh, take a moment and just, if you want to write it down, you can, but pick a projection. You might think of a couple and then try to feel into one that you might want to work with for the process, and then we'll go into the process. And I'm gonna take you through a little bit of relaxation so that it's easier to access things. So while you're sort of feeling into that, I want you just take your hands and maybe you can go off camera if it's more comfortable, Sharon, but you can just sort of rub your head and pull down. It's calming to the mind sometimes just to do that and just kind of soothe yourself a little bit with your palms. You can place them on your face and just hold your face for a moment and keep breathing. Part of this is just becoming aware of ourselves and our body and getting present with ourselves. And you might, if there's any place that feels like it needs support, like maybe your neck needs a little, you could squeeze your shoulders or give yourself effectively what's a little bit of a hug. And just feel yourself present with you. This is your time. You don't have to think about anything else. You don't need to do anything for anyone else. And I want you just to keep going down, maybe even just put your hands on your stomach and just feel like I'm here, I'm present with you. You can even squeeze your legs a little bit and brush your hands down to your feet if that's helpful. And most of all, just keep breathing and let your breath be natural, but notice if you're holding it anywhere and try to let it go. So we're going to try, and most people find it helpful to close your eyes, but do what's comfortable for you. Um, I want you to kind of go inside now. So we want to pick a spot to connect with our expanded self, or what sometimes I call the divine essence or the higher self. And that could be your heart, that could be in your up here in the pineal gland, it could be in your kind of stomach and your solar plexus, but there's some place it feels like a good place for you to rest your focus and connect with your, well, you might even think of as like the wise self that you are, that you have access to. Just focus there. And if you don't know, just pick one. It's okay. Just there's no perfection in this. And invite a connection with this expanded part of yourself. Say like, I invite a direct connection with my higher self, my expanded self, my soul essence. And we're going to open up to the invitation to imagine if I could take one of these judgments and resolve it, I could see the reflection. What could it mean for this relationship? And it might, again, be your relationship with a person, but it could also be with strangers. It could be with your concept of God. It could be your relationship with you. We live in this world of duality, and we have this opportunity to drop that to feel more intimacy and connection with others. And now take whatever judgment you picked that has enough charge to do an exercise. And I want you to imagine that you're able to kind of embrace it without pushing it away. It's like inviting somebody to say, like, okay, let's have a conversation. And it's okay that this has been in place so far. We're not trying to get rid of it. We just want to make friends with it. And let's listen and invite it to show you as we go through this. What do you can invite it? Show me what I need to know to receive the lesson or the teaching or the reflection in this. And we'll start with the actual charge. Like you can feel it, if you can feel that irritation in your body somewhere, because usually projections, while they can be positive, usually we're working with a negative one. Feel that thing that feels upsetting to you and let your body actually show you. Let that sort of be a thread that helps you follow this process of listening. We're going to invite your body to kind of guide us. And as you feel this energy of the judgment, the projection, you can almost imagine you're looking straight into a mirror. If you're a very visual person, this might help. And allow yourself to do the reverse statement. So if you said, you are X, then I want you to say, I am X. Just give you a minute to do that. And the opportunity is to open to the willingness to own your part of the projection, discover what its source is, to show you, like, really, where did it come from? There's some kind of distortion or misunderstanding or hurt that needs attention that is behind this. So we're just going to sit in the stillness a little bit and see what your body can bring you to, what maybe your mind is taking you back in time potentially, or maybe you just have a sense in your body of a place that needs your focus. If you feel stuck at all, you can invite yourself to let you know later, or you can try on. Could this be a reflection of something I do with myself in some way? It's not always exactly what you're seeing, but it's a form of it. Is this a judgment that I'm perhaps placing on people distant from me, or my concept of the universe and some higher power? And is there a willingness, at the very least, just to drop the judgment? And as you find this moment or insight or place inside of you, I invite you to bring it into your heart. And we're going to let the heart be represented by a lotus flower. So you can imagine that it's this soft, beautiful flower that's opening, and your beautiful essence, the love that you are, is inside, bringing love and healing to this part of you. You can just invite it in, and even imagine like that the petals are slowly opening within your heart. You might even be able to imagine the fragrance of the lotus flower and just feel those petals like slowly opening, holding you in this softness, this place of love that has the ability to transmute things, sometimes even without us completely understanding them. They can be shifted and released and integrated. And just rest in that. center of love. And perhaps because we're coming close to our time to close, you can give gratitude for anything that you've received and understanding, as these opportunities or gifts from relationships are just things that are seeking to bring us in reunion with ourselves and with others into more harmony. And then when you're ready, you're welcome to just start to come back to your present awareness in your body and maybe rub your hands together to bring yourself present out of that state. You can always try to carry that peacefulness forward, but we want you to be grounded too as you go back to your day. And I just appreciate everybody who came. And if you found this valuable, let others know about it and invite a friend to come with you next time. And thank you for coming to Love is Alchemy, where love is the medicine.